Comedian Lou Sanders once said, "If you haven't been amassing embarrassment, you've been not taking enough risks in life." And I cannot think of a riskier venture than cage fighting. By default, you're being put on display in your undies and mocked endlessly online when knocked unconscious by an ungrateful fandom. But today's video will show that there are also mortifying moments after the final horn that might be far worse than even that. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point. A huge thank you to our channel Hall of Fame members for supporting videos like this one, and these are the 10 most humiliating post-fight moments in MMA history. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer about, well, bodily fluids. YouTube hates them and hates paying people money because of them. We at On Point aren't too fond of them either, so any humiliating post-fight moment that might involve fighters having excreted them, we will not be including. Alright, so let's dive face first into number 10, Toshi fail. Mixed martial arts has this weird history of fighters injuring themselves celebrating. Johnny Walker dislocated his shoulder while doing the worm. Terrence McKinney injured his knee jumping up against the cage after a victory. Darian Caldwell erased a camera person flipping off the stage in Bellator. But the most humiliating of these instances is no doubt poor Toshikatsu Harada at a Grachan event back in 2010. After getting a solid first round ground and pound victory over Akihito Hara, Toshi decided he was going to jump up on the cage, and that was as far as he got, or he really wanted to try a flat back bump pro wrestling style on the canvas. Either way, he promptly had the wind knocked out of him and was sent crawling around the cage in agony. Nothing like ruining your victory with the most humiliating post-fight celebration possible. My favorite part is his team laughing at him cage side as he's crawling around. And then poor Akihito has to go over there and be gracious in defeat when this goofball just hurt himself worse than he was capable of doing in the actual fight with him. Number 9, Chandler stool pull. If anything has come from this Conor McGregor fight debacle, it's that Michael Chandler has proven he can take pretty much any setback in stride. But man, was that premise tested when Iron Mike was defending his lightweight strap against Brett Primus on Bellator's big New York card. An early low kick by the challenger would result in the dreaded foot drop condition, leaving Chandler hobbling around the cage in the early minutes. Despite scoring a knockdown while fighting through it, the referee would call time to have the doctors look at the foot, which isn't a thing. The fight was over at that point, but I'm sure the ref was hoping the doc would confirm it was too bad to continue. While rallying the crowd to support a restart, Chandler stood up, only for him to have the stool pulled out from underneath him like a Looney Tunes episode.
And to add insult to injury, they pulled the stool out from under him. That sucks. Wow. It's over.
On national TV, you got Charlie Brown, like, you know, like all Three Stooges, Mo, Larry, Curly, thanks for nothing, Doc.
Honestly, I'd have never gotten back up. I'd have still been sitting there as the crew was breaking down the cage. There is a happy ending, though, as Mike would regain the title from Primus a year and a half later. Number 8, just say no. You know, they say it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, but I think whoever said that probably never had their marriage proposal rejected in front of a live audience. Czech influencers were throwing down at something called Clash of the Stars earlier this year when YouTuber/fighter Lucas Bukovac, who just lost a 2-on-1 fight even though he was on the 2 side, decided that following the defeat would be the best time to get on a microphone in front of thousands of people and propose to his then girlfriend. You don't need to speak the language to know what her answer was. The poor woman has water thrown on her before revealing that Lucas had cheated on her. And while this all feels a bit Jerry Springer, especially knowing this guy is a YouTuber and we are a desperate bunch, he and this woman are no longer together apparently. That, and if that woman was acting, she deserves a Czech Oscar. This one would be higher on the list, but I think this guy might have deserved it. Number 7, Maynard versus Rogan. While the Joe Rogan of today is a lot more passive when it comes to pushing back on people he's in conversation with, early 2000s Joe loved a good argument. And unfortunately for Gray Maynard on the Tough 5 finale, Rogan was in an arguing mood. After wailing on Rob Emerson for the better part of the fight, a slam would see Gray unconscious by the way of his own force, having spiked his head directly into the mat. Simultaneously, Rob would tap due to a rib injury. The rare double TKO ruling was a stunner of a finish, and left the now concussed Maynard refuting his recent unconsciousness. For whatever reason, Joe decided he was going to argue with a man who had just had his brain scrambled, and adamantly adamantly defended his position with about 300 replays.
You're completely unconscious. Look at the replay, bro. Bro, look at the replay.
When someone calls you bro like that, it's go time. As if it wasn't embarrassing or apparent enough what had happened after the lengthy argument with Maynard, Rogan then revisited the replay again when speaking with Emerson after the fight. Yes, Joe, Gray Maynard was knocked out. I think everybody has now established that. Number 6, Griffin runs away. The emotional ups and downs of Forrest Griffin's incredible journey from tough to a world title are a huge part of his lasting legacy. Fans loved that he was so human. Unfortunately, though, the very worst of Griffin's outbursts would overshadow a fantastic bout he had in closing out his trilogy of fights with fellow legend Tito Ortiz. After a fantastic close-fought back and forth, Forrest immediately beelined for the locker room.
Where's he going?
Literally running out of the arena prior to the decision even being read, only returning after a Carmine-faced Dana White forced him back into the cage. Even more embarrassingly, Griffin had won the fight.
I mean, things can't get any worse, can they?
The embarrassment would not end there though, because he would then inexplicably conduct Ortiz's post-fight interview and completely derail what was meant to be Tito's retirement and goodbye to the fans. And while you could argue that that was humiliating for Ortiz, which it was, Griffin's conduct and how he handled what he thought was a loss was far worse. Forrest would apologize for the whole situation afterwards, to be fair.
I just forget sometimes. I get, emotional guy. I was frustrated with myself.
And as it would unfortunately turn out, Tito wasn't actually retiring. Number 5, Paulo gets mounted.
Oh, it's about to get worse.
You would think that physically dominating your opponent in a simulated life or death scenario would be enough to satisfy a fighter's basal ganglia. But we have regularly seen that it's not, and taunting your now vanquished foe comes next. No post-fight mocking has ever been more humiliating though than when Paulo Costa lost his massively high-profile middleweight title challenge against Israel Adesanya. The hype for this one was off the charts as both fighters were prime and genuinely seemed to dislike each other. That and the whole world was shut down, so there wasn't much else to be excited about. Fans were expecting Costa to be the bulldozer he was in the cage. Instead, Izzy would put on a 2-round masterclass that ended with a TKO and the champion, for lack of a better term, mounting the defeated and now humiliated Bohachinha.
Oh dear lord!
Given the hyper-masculine nature of mixed martial arts fandom, I don't think a more devastating taunt could have been used post-fight. When paired with Costa's underwhelming performance in the bout itself, Adesanya ended their budding rivalry about as definitively as could be possible. Number 4, Stipe's Phantom Tap. I don't think in the history of any other major sport, there's been an individual athlete presented with video evidence on a live microphone going to an entire arena full of hostile fans that refutes a controversial claim they just made about a hometown hero. The humiliation of Alistair Overeem following his knockout loss to Stipe Miocic cannot be overstated. This man just had his head bounced off the canvas several times, was awakened following one of the most devastating moments of his career, and then had a microphone thrust in his face. The Reem chose to use that time to make a claim that he believed champion Miocic had tapped earlier in the fight during a guillotine attempt, but it went unnoticed.
And I clearly felt the tap.
He had, in fact, not. And we know that because Detective Joe Rogan had everyone in the arena watch several replays in real time that proved his statement false.
Where do you see the tap? Well, it didn't look like a tap to us.
How Alistair didn't just implode in that moment due to a rapid, violent cringing, I do not know.
I don't know. I tapped out when I had 2 hands on his hands.
That's what he said.
Yeah, but I mean, well, he's also not feeling too good right now.
But the man immediately afterwards thanked the people of Cleveland for their hospitality, which is beyond impressive given what just happened. Number 3, uncomfortably close Yoel. I've said many times that one of the worst things a fight winner can do is over-embrace the loser, especially after a finish. Yes, show sportsmanship. Go over, say something nice, shake their hand, or give a quick hug, but anything beyond that is way too much in that moment. Don't pick them up, and for the love of all that is holy, do not do what Yoel Romero did to Luke Rockhold after viciously knocking him out and ending his hopes of regaining the middleweight title. In one of the most awkward and humiliating moments this sport has ever produced, a very loving Romero was, for a lack of a better term, all over Rockhold and all up in his space for what felt like half an hour. Not only was the guy just KO'd and probably halfway conscious, but you just ruined this man's life. He doesn't want to talk to you about whatever happened at that party, Yoel. While the moment was one of the more sympathetic of Luke's career, it was still incredibly humiliating, even if it was clearly not the intent of Yoel for it to be. Number 2, Mother Knows Best. Okay, when the Washington Post is doing an article on your small regional MMA bout in Yekaterinburg, Russia, you have been thoroughly humiliated. In one of the most bizarre stories I've ever come across in this sport, and only because of Kaposa, like so many of us, Viktor Kichigyan, the youngest of 3 professional fighting brothers, got the brakes beat off of him by Ruslan Yamanbayev at FNG 67. A tale as old as MMA, right? Getting beat up, of course, is humiliating in and of itself, but what makes this instance so much worse is that Viktor is trained and cornered by his own mother, who wore her Sunday best to the cage. After the brutal loss, Coach Mom slapped the shit out of her recently knocked out son while simultaneously wiping blood from his face, which is just the most mom thing to do. Viktor eventually got tired of it and exited the cage against his mother's wishes, but hard to blame the guy after being humiliated like that. Mom's name is Anna Azovskaya, and there's actually a documentary about her called I Love You So Much, Mommy. Number 1, Stand and Wang. So the official name of this episode of The Ultimate Fighter that we're going to highlight here is literally Wah Wah. Keep that in mind as we go along here, because losing in the UFC is always tough, but losing on a UFC reality show where the editing team can really lay the humiliation on extra thick can be so much worse. Case in point, the now legendary Andy Wang, who is legendary for this very episode.
My goal in every fight is to show warrior spirit. I'm not here for the money. I'm not here for the fame. I'm here to give our respect on the battlefield. The
Team Penn fighter and jiu-jitsu specialist decided to keep the fight on the feet against Brandon Melendez warrior style, despite Coach BJ pleading for him to go for a takedown. After getting thoroughly dominated for 2 rounds, Wang completely broke down in the octagon as well as in the locker room, which the show highlighted in great detail.
Come on, man.
As if that moment wasn't enough, 2 episodes later, Andy would be kicked off Team Penn and made fun of even more, solidifying his permanent MMA meme status. You know who was there to comfort every fighter on today's list, though? The editor of this video, Max Randall. He's a stand-up guy and talented as hell. Please follow his socials and go check out his fantastic YouTube channel. Another massive thanks to our channel Hall of Famers. Your endless support is the lifeblood of this operation. Fight fans, enter the hall by hitting the join button, get your shout out, get your exclusive content, and give us your input on videos you want to see. Like and subscribe for more cringe-inducing moments like we went through today. Leave a comment about which of these poor fellas you feel the worst for, and thank you so much for watching. See you later, alligator.